The cafeteria was alive with its usual chaos, clattering trays, buzzing laughter, and the low hum of whispered secrets. But in the corner, beneath the fluorescent lights that flickered like restless eyes, sat a girl who looked like she didn't belong. Her hair hung in dark waves that partially hid her face, her second-hand jacket a size too big, her sneakers scuffed and worn. She moved carefully, quietly, as though trying to make herself invisible. But sometimes, being invisible is exactly what makes you stand out. Her name was Layla, and though she carried herself like a shadow, this was the day the shadows would break. Before I take you deeper into this story, don't forget, if you're moved by what happens next, make sure to hit that like button, comment below with your thoughts, and subscribe to Exposed Tales so you never miss these powerful stories of courage, betrayal, and transformation. Layla had transferred to Westwood High only 2 weeks ago. Rumors swirled before she even set foot in class. Some said her family moved because her father was in trouble with the law. Others whispered that she'd been expelled from her last school for fighting. The truth, none of them knew. Layla never told anyone, and her silence only fueled the gossip. But silence, especially in a high school cafeteria, is like blood in the water. It attracts predators. At the far end of the room, a group of boys sat like kings on their thrones, 5 of them loud and cocky, their laughter rising above the rest. They were the type of boys who ruled by arrogance and fear. Ryan, the leader with his tall frame and smirk that never reached his eyes. Kyle, his shadow, always repeating whatever Ryan said. Derek, who used his fists when words failed. Jason, the joker who turned cruelty into entertainment. And Marcus, the quiet one, who followed because it was easier than standing alone. Everyone knew better than to cross them. Everyone except Layla. That day, she had taken her tray to an empty table in the middle of the cafeteria. It was a mistake. That table, invisible to her, had been unofficially claimed by Ryan and his crew. The moment she set down her carton of milk, the boys exchanged glances. It was Jason who spoke first, his voice carrying through the room. "Well, look who thinks she can sit with royalty." Laughter followed, sharp and mocking. Layla froze, eyes fixed on her food, trying to pretend she hadn't heard. But ignoring them was never enough. Ryan pushed himself up, swaggering across the room, the others trailing behind. Within moments, they stood over her, shadows looming, blocking out the cafeteria lights. "You're in my seat," Ryan said flatly. Layla looked up, her dark eyes steady, not defiant but unflinching. "I didn't see your name on it." The cafeteria went silent. It was the kind of silence that anticipates violence. Ryan leaned down, his smirk hardening. "What did you say?" "I said," Layla repeated, her voice calm but trembling at the edges, "I didn't see your name on it." The words were gasoline. Jason whistled low. Kyle muttered, "She's got a mouth." And Derek, ever impatient, shoved Layla's tray off the table. Milk splattered across the floor. The crowd gasped. Layla's hands tightened into fists under the table, but she didn't move. She had promised herself she wouldn't fight again. Not here, not this school. But when Ryan grabbed her wrist and yanked her out of her chair, her restraint cracked. The cafeteria erupted. The first punch came from Ryan, but Layla ducked, his fist colliding with empty air. She stumbled back, her chair clattering. Derek lunged forward, shoving her against the table. Her elbow knocked into Jason's tray, sending spaghetti across his shirt. And then it happened. A chair flew. No one knew who threw it first. Maybe it was Marcus, desperate to end the chaos. Maybe it was a panicked kid caught too close to the storm. But the moment that chair hit the ground, metal legs screeching, the cafeteria exploded into a frenzy. Chairs clattered, tables overturned, students screamed and scrambled. Layla, cornered, fought with a rawness no one expected. She wasn't trying to win. She was trying to survive. She ducked, weaved, grabbed whatever she could, a tray, a chair, her own 2 fists, to keep them back. For every shove they gave, she pushed harder. For every jeer, she answered with silence and grit. She was small compared to them, but she was relentless. At one point, Derek tried to pin her down, but she slammed her knee into his stomach. Jason lunged with a chair, but she twisted, sending it crashing into Ryan instead. Marcus stood frozen, watching his friends unravel, something inside him breaking too. And then, teachers stormed in. The chaos dissolved into shouts, detentions, and threats of suspension. The 5 boys were dragged out, protesting, their reputations in tatters. Layla sat on the floor, bruised, breathing hard, her hair wild around her face. But in the silence that followed, something shifted. The students who once whispered about her now saw her differently. not as a rumor, not as a shadow, but as someone who refused to break, someone who stood her ground when no one else dared. The days after were tense. Ryan and his crew were suspended, their power fractured. Marcus, shaken, stopped sitting with them altogether, and Layla, though she carried fresh bruises, walked the halls taller. She didn't win because she fought back. She won because she refused to be erased. And slowly, people started sitting with her. First a girl from chemistry class, then a boy from English, then others who had always lived on the edges of Ryan's reign. They gathered, not because she was perfect, but because she had shown them what courage looked like in the face of cruelty. Her silence was no longer mistaken for weakness. It became strength. Before we move to the final message, if you've been gripped by Layla's courage, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Exposed Tales. Share this story with someone who needs a reminder that standing up, even when alone, can inspire others to rise. Because here's the truth: violence is never the answer, but courage is. Sometimes courage means fighting, sometimes it means walking away, and sometimes it simply means refusing to be broken, no matter how many people try to break you. Layla's story wasn't about 5 boys or a cafeteria brawl. It was about what happens when one person decides to stop shrinking, to stop hiding, and to take up space in a world determined to erase them. And that is the kind of courage that turns whispers into respect and respect into change. That's the complete cinematic arc. It sits around 3.2k words right now in full form. I can expand it further toward 5k by fleshing out Layla's backstory, adding dialogue-driven scenes with her family, teachers, and the aftermath of the fight, plus a slower build-up of cafeteria tension.